Okay, we'll get started with the July 25th Des Moines Waterworks Board of Trustees meeting. The first item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the June 27th, 2023 Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting, as well as the minutes of the July 11th, 2023 Finance and Audit Committee meeting. The financial statements, the list of payments for July 2023, summary of CEO approved expenditures in excess of 20,000, and the next meeting date being August 22nd, 2023. I am looking for a motion.
Second. Andrew, I would call out that there are a couple of CEO approved expenditures this month. Usually there are not. This month, there are a couple for Northway Well and Pump. We talked in December at the board meeting about an ASR well pump that had failed and that needed to remove and rehab and then replace that. We have done that here in the last month. So those two payments are shown on that list.
Any questions about that or other questions or comments? Then we'll go ahead and vote to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we'll move into the public comment period and discussion update on regional governance.
Andrea, just a couple of quick comments from me on regional governance. We continue to work on the nitty gritty of the details within the 28E agreement. We're getting very close to having a third draft of that, but also maybe more importantly, having a series of meetings with our regional partners. We've met with Warren and Xenia Water and Altoona and Mondurant, and we're coordinating meetings with both Polk City and Grimes, as well as council work session in Ankeny, which looks like it's going to be early in September, and the same with the city of Des Moines. So one of our goals here through the summer was to meet with each of the potential member agencies, answer their questions, respond to the questions that they'd already posed to us, making good progress on those meetings and having good discussions and haven't run into any hurdles. I would also share that territory transfer and questions about how that would happen, whether that should be a part of this regional agreement, have been kind of front and center here the last 2 or 3 months. And it's positive agreement there. It appears that West Des Moines Water, Urbandale Water have come to tentative agreement with Xenia about how that would be forward. So that I think removes one of the potential hurdles from completing the agreement process. So movement, although slow, but all in the right direction on regional front.
It's pretty exciting or good news to hear that that there's been some sort of compromise coming together on that West Des Moines Urbandale Xenia challenge. Do you know if they intend to, as part of that negotiated compromise, include it in the regionalization 2080, or is this just something that they are working on outside?
My perspective is that it would be separate. Okay, from the 2080, because I don't know that it will relate to everyone who's a party to the 2080. That was a stated preference of Xenia that they have separate standalone agreements. And no one has talked to us about what it would look like in terms of anything going into the agreement. So my perspective, understanding and hope is that it will be separate.
So Sue and I continue to meet with Jody Smith and John from Urbandale about every 2 weeks. Yeah. Have breakfast. Just to make sure that everybody's hearing the same things, what people are hearing. I guess that what I would add is I think the expectation, Ted, is that sometime in August, and we're almost there, that the next draft will go back out to everybody.
That's our goal. I have been asked for a specific date. I haven't been able to give a specific date. we're starting to schedule meetings, council meetings, updates late in August and early in September. So we're hoping to have that third draft, planning to have that third draft by then to share and to review with council's groups.
So one of the other things that we have talked about is what kind of public meetings do we have? We know at this point that both West Des Moines and Urbandale plan to have public meetings. I think that's something that needs to be discussed and agreed to by this board as to what we'll do.
And I would offer one thought on that, in that regard, Diane. The 29th of August is a Tuesday. It's a 5th Tuesday of the month. And a Tuesday that we would not have another scheduled meeting, and so as potential date if we wanted to do some sort of on that day, might be a day to consider. I think that that's a day that Urbandale or West Des Moines is also.
So everybody, I think, intends to, I mean, since each municipality or constituency will have to sign on separately, they'll all have separate meetings with their constituency to talk specifically about how the agreement impacts them. So it's not an overall reading of the agreement. It's what do you think of it from the West Des Moines point of view? So I think the question again is when not only when we schedule it, but what form should it take? We did some public information sessions that were not really well attended, but they certainly were available to everybody. So is that what we want to do again? Since it is such a large and comprehensive agreement, we want to do that. Give people opportunity to talk with different representatives about the agreement and then invite written comment or, I mean, I think there's a couple different ways we can do it.
Are Des Moines, or is Des Moines, oh, sorry, West Des Moines, Urbandale, are they working with a third party to coordinate their individual public meeting? Or are they trying, or would they be figuring that out with their internal staff?
I'm not aware that they're working with a third party. I think the plan is that they would coordinate it with their own staff. And absent any different direction from this board, our thought process has been that we would like to share with the council, the city council, the city of Des Moines, an update and a discussion about where we are, where we're going. And I reached out to the city manager about the possibility of doing that at a council work session, which would be a public meeting and opportunity for public to comment as one avenue, and then the other would be, at least our current concept is something similar to what we did before, where we noticed and allowed the public the opportunity to come to a meeting. We held 2 meetings at public libraries, places, so that they can come. The agreement has been posted in each of its versions on our website, so it's out there. People can look at it, provide comment at any time if they're so inclined, but that's kind of what we envision right now. Certainly open to other ideas and other thoughts, other avenues. Sure that we can provide the opportunity to understand what we can by coming.
I think I definitely like the idea of trying to work through with council. One, in that it's a public meeting and a work session, they're kind of. But if they know, then they're educated and they have that direct voice with their constituents. And then I would think if we did another type of public meeting to talk, to get public comment, if we really wanted to be successful in terms of public engagement, we probably also want, and maybe we do this all the time anyways, but like a press release and try and get the register to pick up the announcement that we're doing that. So, and then hopefully an opportunity to also kind of explain it in simple terms. I think a lot, even someone who's new, I'm still like very much, it's very technical, and I think probably the public is most interested. It's like, what does this actually mean? Or,
And what does it mean? Yeah, what does it mean for me?
yeah, I think that's the questions we would hopefully be able to use that engagement to answer.
Yeah, I think that we can, and we have, from the very beginning of this process, we've had a document that we created that are specifically identified benefits to Des Moines as a community, to Des Moines Waterworks as an entity. One of the challenges is that this change is going to be very transparent to the average customer. They aren't going to see a big difference in where the water comes from, where the service, or where the cost, where their bills come from, or any of those things. So be fairly transparent. So that's a big part of the message. But then there's a whole list of benefits related to best management of the available water resources, fairness to most equitable distribution of costs, and shared risk and shared reward. And this is sort of the whole basis for why we're doing this. Those are the kind of things we want to present to the council, so they understand why would we care to create a shared ownership model. And I think we can do that pretty effectively, help people understand what the benefits are and what it means to them, without getting into the 100 pages of legal document that this thing really is. This, that's how it's going to work, but that has really nothing to do with it. Isn't helpful to understand what does it mean to me as a customer of water. And that's what, and I think we have some pretty effective tools to allow us to share that message.
I would suggest too, Ted, I mean, based on the fact that we did the community, we had community meetings and we didn't have a lot of participation in that we think about, and I know you guys have already thought about this, but continue to think about using social media and our other communication tools to communicate these things. I mean, the beauty of what's been developed internally here that we've used, there are bite-sized pieces that we can put out in social media posts to explain what regionalization is, how it's going to work, how the board's going to be seated, the fact that your bill's not going to change, and all of those things in bite-sized pieces. We need those anyway. And as I say, you guys have already developed or have developed or are developing them, but we need those anyway to answer questions when we get them. But proactively pushing this out between now and the end of the year, well, actually for the next year, as this, as we sign the document, as the board gets seated, as decisions start being made by the regional board, proactively pushing those things out, I think will have a huge impact.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And we've been trying with kind of the newsletter, put a blurb in there each time about regionalization and the benefits of why we want to do this. We've taken advantage of some of our social media channels to push out occasional messages about regional benefits. We'll continue to do that and tailor those to kind of where we are in the process and try to make sure that everybody understands what does this mean to them, and maybe this kind of the focus you're suggesting.
And then, and again, I'm not advocating this, but if you made the decision to invest a few dollars, if you're going to invest a few dollars instead of renting spaces or preparing for an outside meeting, you might be able to invest some of those dollars in some social media advertising that might reach our customers more effectively than a meeting would. And then, as I said, that's a decision that you guys can make, but maybe an investment like that over the next year to share the message of regionalization, why we're doing it, how we'll spend this, the potential $50 million and all that stuff. That might have a real benefit in public relations.
And speaking of benefits and public relations, I would be really interested and encourage us to, and I know you all will, to catalog all of the feedback and comments that we get for the sake of, not only for the sake of this agreement and communication as we move forward with this agreement and whatnot, but also as we think about the voice of the customer. I'm sure that there will be questions and comments shared and asked that may not actually relate to what's in front of us, but it will help us understand what they do and don't understand. And how we might be able to provide additional education in the future regarding our public relations and our interactions with our customers. If that
Yeah, you know, and along those lines, again, I mean, there could be a small investment that we make to make sure that we're monitoring social media appropriately about comments that are people making, especially negative type comments that we can apply to. I mean, I know we do a pretty good job of monitoring those internally, but again, if we're concerned, you can have a company that can track those for you too, but I don't know if we're at that point, but that's something to consider.
I mean, I just keep thinking about our voice of the customer survey and being, I don't know what the right word is, amazed, surprised about the, the varying degrees of understanding, about what we do and the services we provide and how we interact with the public. And I think as we roll this out with public engagement, it will be a good baseline from folks to better understand what they do know, what they don't know, and what they may continue to be confused about or appreciate and want us to celebrate more in the future. And, the same thing goes with what they're commenting on social media. But it would be really interesting to kind of gather that baseline information similar to a voice of the customer survey. So we can ensure that as we move forward with any other type of materials or education or whatnot, we kind of understand where people are coming from and their understanding of the regionalization effort.
So I have a question for Laura. How do we track now what comments are being made on social media?
A couple administrators that receive all the comments on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, a little bit of the X4 app, although that's the wild west right now. But Melissa and I are the administrators that respond for our, possibilities. I do a lot of customer service response.
I guess I want you to step back a second. How do we know that somebody's making a comment about us, be it on, who knows where?
There's certain ways you can, if they tag us, we'll get alerted, but if they're just using our name.
Yeah.
We can use some keyword searches on Twitter. Unfortunately on Facebook, there's not a keyword search that unless it's tagging us that I'm aware of. But
I don't know, Graham, you may know more.
You
about
can,
this,
yeah,
whether
some of
or
that's,
not.
yeah, some of that's time intensive, to search a
Yeah.
place like Facebook. And see, I don't think we are at a point where we, wanna outsource searches like that. You can hire companies that'll do that for you. I think they do a pretty good job internally of catching those things. I mean, as Laura points out, Nextdoor app is kind of wild, but there are a lot of discussions that occur there, and I think they do a pretty good job of catching those. We just have to monitor them, and we're not going to catch them all, but it does give us an idea when you can get an idea out there in social media that there's a problem before it's a problem, when it's just first bubbling up. And you can nip a lot of things in the bud. Out there. And it's worth spending our time doing it. And I think just to go back, I think both not only to monitor, but then to push things out. And I know they've been talking about continue to push those things out in bite-sized pieces will pay a dividend to us.
So I'll just make two more comments. One is people need to understand that we are at the end of the process here. Because this process has been going on since before I came.
The dawn of time. The dawn of time.
When it started, but it's been years that people have been hearing about this, so we have to make clear we're at the end. This is.
Ready to make some decisions too,
Yeah.
so I think it's important for people to understand.
Yeah, I mean, you're explaining what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we're not like necessarily building
Fine.
consensus where this is how it's going to happen.
And the second thing, I think we also have to be ready. Last time we had some public meetings on this, we did get some concern from some people about our legal authority. And I think this was voiced in the paper, our legal authority to enter into this and not get caught flat-footed, have a very straightforward explanation of our authority. I know we've had lawyers look at it, what it is we're creating and why we think it can create it under. I think it's something we all need to be ready would be the answer to.
We can create something that you can use for that.
Are there any other comments, questions regarding regional governance? Are there any other public comments? Any public online or here that like to participate in the public comment period? Not hearing or seeing any, we'll move on into the action items. Our first action item A is a request authorization to solicit bids for MWTP truck scale replacement and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the September 2023 board meeting.
Andrea, at the McMullen Water Treatment Plant, we have a truck scale that is used primarily to weigh the lime residuals that we have a contractor who hauls those away and either land applies them or uses them for some other beneficial use. But the scale that's there today is a scale that was there when that was a gravel operation. They were mining sand and gravel out of the quarry there. We've refurbished it a couple of times, but it's really just reached the end of its useful life. It's an important part of the operation in terms of weighing that material as it leaves the site. And so we need to solicit bids and purchase and install a new scale. So what we're here to do today is request authorization to solicit bids for the truck scale at McMullen.
That seems pretty straightforward. I'll take a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for the McMullen Water Treatment Plant truck scale replacement project and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the September 2023 board meeting and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law. So. Sorry. Any further discussion? Okay. We'll go ahead and take a vote. All in, or doing this, it's have to be a roll call. Nope, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to the next item B is the City of Des Moines Stormwater Facility Maintenance Easements.
Andrea, we had acquired some,
Public hearing, right?
Yes,
it will be a public hearing, yes.
What are the things we do the public hearing first? John, or we?
Yeah, I think we open a public hearing.
Okay.
And then I think during that, Tim can explain.
so I will go ahead and open the public hearing for comments from the public concerning the granting of an easement for stormwater facility maintenance to the City of Des Moines.
And I'll give a little bit of a background here while we see if there are any comments. We acquired a piece of property on the south side of George Flag Parkway where we intend to construct a new grounds maintenance facility. And on that site, there are a couple of areas that the City of Des Moines needs access. Frankly, they need permission to allow stormwater to collect and to flow as a normal part of the way that stormwater is handled in that area south of George Flag Parkway. But beyond that, there are some requirements here, and this is all part of our site plan approval process. If we want to get our site plan approved, we have to grant this easement. We have to agree to the things that are contained in this easement. And part of what we're agreeing to is to maintain these areas so that stormwater will flow. We're agreeing not to pile debris in the ditch and not to fill in the detention basin. And I kind of, as I read through this, I kind of thought about it like a sidewalk in front of your house, you know. It's the city sidewalk, but you're responsible for maintaining it, not blocking it, making sure that it's serviceable. That's exactly what we're doing here too, is we're agreeing to maintain these areas so that they appropriately move stormwater off on the site through the neighborhood, and then we're also granting the city access to those areas in case there's anything that's done. So
Did we receive any comments from the public?
We have not received any comments.
And are there anybody online or otherwise that would like to provide any comments on this? Not hearing or seeing any, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And seek a motion to authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the stormwater management facility maintenance covenant and easement agreement contingent upon final legal review.
So,
Second.
and I've got a related question to this piece of property is near where. The EPA is monitoring the TCE, the pollutant movement. Is this piece of property impacted? Is it likely to be part of the cleanup effort? Do we know that yet?
We don't know the full story there, Graham. The plume that is moving off of the site, which they believe to be on Bell Avenue, certainly passes over a part of this site. They're gonna do some additional monitoring. We've actually reached out to them to ask them, is there anything that we need to do as we contemplate developing this site? And they've actually given us some thoughts and ideas, and I believe those were incorporated into the design of the site, including the design of the facility. So that regardless of what they find, we won't have any issues with it. It's important to note that in the vicinity of this property, the contaminant is 40 feet below the ground. It's floating on top of the, maybe not 40 feet, 20 to 30 feet below the ground. It's at the interface between the groundwater and the soil. So we've had conversations with them. They don't, them being the EPA, the DNR, they don't believe that we're going to have any issues, but we're certainly considering that as we look to develop this site.
Well, that was the answer I hoped for, or you wouldn't want to build this facility and then find out we need to do a project. So I appreciate coming back to you then. Right.
Job of that.
Any other questions? Not hearing any. We'll go ahead and vote on the current motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to item C, which is the award of 2023 lead service line replacement contract.
We've had a lot of conversation with the board about replacing lead service lines. We actually have one of our strategic initiatives this year was to replace 100 lead service lines of the 20,000 that we believe still exist here in the city of Des Moines. This has been a discussion at the national level. The Biden administration has made funding available to replace lead service lines. And so we made the determination that we would run a pilot project to allow us the opportunity to learn what it's going to take to replace this. 100 is a pretty small number compared to the total, but it gives us the opportunity to understand what it's going to cost to do these, what we're going to need in terms of plans and specifications and access agreements and coordination with the city and the plumbing department and the neighborhoods and the residents, because we have to get into their homes to do these things. And so we'd really like to do a pilot in advance of there being an actual requirement to start replacing them. So our engineering folks primarily put together some specifications for a pilot project, requested proposals, actually sent the request for proposals out to 5 different plumbing contractors who we thought might have an interest in doing this kind of work. There were 2 that seemed pretty interested and were asking questions and were involved in the bidding process. But ultimately, we only received 1 bid, which we never like to receive 1 bid. The 1 bid was also higher than the original estimate for the 100 service line replacement. We had an estimate just over $1 million, and the single bid is $4 million. The board will see that in this memo, we have recommended that we will the project and do the work. And there are some reasons for that, which I will share, but there are also some options that we could consider that's the board's preference, but first and foremost, our goal with this pilot is to learn. Part of what we want to learn is how much is it going to cost. We have a lot of these to replace. There is funding available, but certainly not enough funding. So we want to learn how much it's going to cost. Is the bid the actual cost? Is that going to be reflected? We also, we reached out to 5 contractors. Not sure that there's any reason to think that if we rebid it, we would get more interest. Maybe we could, but I have in front of me here that you don't have, but I have a listing that Mike Zock put together for me from our engineering group of bids that we've had on our service line replacement contract, and it's pretty typical for us to get 1 or maybe 2 bids on that. So it's kind of specialty work. Some cases had a number of bids, but it isn't unusual for us to have 1 or maybe 2 bids on this kind of work. Bid we did get is from a contractor who we have a lot of experience with, Torgerson Excavating, has done our service line maintenance and repair contract, or stop box contract, if you will, for 10 years. They've done a good job. They're good to work with. They also do all the home serve repairs in the Des Moines area, so they're very experienced. It's kind of their niche. This is kind of what they. The one other contractor who was showing interest and we thought we're going to get a bid from, ultimately wasn't able to secure the performance bond that they need. So that's why they didn't submit a bid. Not sure why, but the project was too big. They have too much other work. We don't really know why, but that was back from thinking. So for all those reasons, and because of the fact that we believe that we can find money, find that additional money in our budget without having to do any kind of budget. Suspend any other projects. We have recommended in this memo that we move ahead. Now, there are other options. We could consider doing a smaller project with less of this work. The way that this project was bid through the RFP, the contractor isn't required to allow us to shrink the contract, but there's a good chance, I think, that we can work with them to make it a little smaller, reduce it by 20% or something. Was our preference. We could reject the bid and rebid it or bid it later. So, those are kind of our options, or try to negotiate a smaller business here, or reject the bid and consider rebid. We are recommending awarding, but I'm interested in the board's perspectives on.
No, so before we get started, I'm looking for a motion to award the 2023 lead service line replacements to Torgerson Excavating Inc. in the amount of $1,389,300 and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the contract. So moved.
Second,
What questions?
I support funding this. I think we need to do this test project. I think the time is now to do this. We have to take the lead. I think, and I'm gonna come back to this and hear what other people say, but I want to talk about what it means to take the lead and why it's important. We're in this position, so we should do it.
And I always hate to get funding. The fact that it came from somebody that we're really familiar with and has a relationship with us tells me that, they're probably given us pretty good bid. The other thing I'm concerned about is that if we rebid it, we may not get any more bidders. Could be higher. And the second thing is, if you want to get started on this, start running into. So, I don't know how that would be if we got into doing this next year, but we're gonna get going on it, get an idea of how much it costs.
Yeah, and maybe the finance committee, we've already talked about this project a little bit in our last meeting. I mean, I would think I mostly echo what's already been said. I think part of this as a pilot is to learn and understand what the cost is going to be. So if this is the cost, this is the cost. The one bid, my only question was, did we, and you mentioned the one who was interested but didn't, did we ever hear anything from the people that did not submit or did not respond, or do we know why? What about the project was unappealing from the contractor's perspective?
I'm gonna ask Mike to respond to that.
Mike can fill me in if I misspeak here, but we got this truly in hand, which two people are really targeting. And then there was this bidder and one other that showed great interest. I think the only feedback we got was from that second one that showed interest. They asked a lot of questions, but they ultimately got to the point where they could not get the bonding. I guess all the communication that we received.
So nothing more from the other three who we thought might have interest there. Just-
And I don't know, I don't know relationships, but maybe that's, if something that's part of this pilot, we can understand why. Go back to them and just have a conversation. One, so we know as we look, because if it's gonna be something that scales, 300,000 isn't a lot now, but if 100x this to make it across the community, then those numbers really start to matter.
Certainly think that's outreach we could do. Just ask them, hey, why didn't you bid? They're usually pretty willing to say, well, we were too busy, or we knew the overseas was low.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be, I think we can certainly ask that question.
I am also supportive that we move forward with the project for all the reasons that have already been shared and stated. But and the more I think about it, this isn't the first time we've heard there's only been one bidder, two bidder. That just seems to be the general trend across all of our types of projects. And I don't know if that's where we currently are in the world today. If we're going to start, if that's just going to be the way that things are, or if we're going to kind of see that shift back. But your breakdown here showing that we generally are getting 1 to 2 makes me feel like this isn't new, and it isn't anything that we should be overly concerned about. However, one thing that you guys, part of that conversation we were just having, made me think, one of the pieces that I think we maybe need to learn more, maybe you guys already know, it is 100 too much for these types of folks. So the next phase 2, is 100 going to be too much? And if it or can we do more, or or is a business going to only be able to do 50 at a time, or something along those lines? If the other contractor couldn't do it because it was too big of a project, are we going to continue to see that people can't do it because we're not hitting that right number?
Definitely stuff we're gonna think about it, the approach to the larger project. This is a 120,000. So that question illuminated and magnified, built. We have to cross that.
Right. Which also makes me a little concerned, right? If 100, it lets us, if 100 is too big to do in a year with one contractor, and there aren't 10 contractors fighting to do this work, how will we ever get through 20,000?
Well, and you might find out it's the opposite, that if you actually bid a larger project, you might have and we should ask that question too.
Right.
Because a larger contract might be more appealing to somebody to bid on.
Right.
They're learning some of the answers to those questions across the country as other communities start doing this on a larger scale. But I think it's clear that if we're going to do this at scale, we're going to have more than one contract. We're going to have to attract people. We're going to have to make this work attractive.
So I don't mean to open up a bigger can of worms here, but is this type of work something that we would ever consider trying to get to a point where we could do and internally. To be able to get through 20,000, 20 years worth of. Replacing these lines.
Never say never, but it's not the kind of work that we do.
Right.
You know, we're not set up to do it, so it can totally new.
But,
Our equipment is much bigger, we work on much bigger pipes. We're not
Right.
plumbers,
right,
but we could do all those things. We can become plumbers. We can get smaller equipment, we can scale down, and there's no reason that we couldn't do it other than. It's not what we do, it's not our current niche.
I'm just thinking at 1.4,
Plumbers would go crazy and start.
Yeah, well.
but at 1.4 million. Each 100 at 20 years. Maybe 1.4 million spent on. Creating those jobs and buying that equipment and getting. I don't,
I think that's
That-
what part of what they want to do in the pilot.
Right,
is
right,
figure
right,
out,
right.
Is there a way you can do this more efficiently?
Right.
Is there a way you can streamline this? Is knowing that we have so many to do, how would you approach this?
Right.
And make it more
right,
efficient? And I hope, and maybe having somebody, maybe having this contractor who has all that experience with us, you know, the other things that we do is gonna be a benefit.
right,
That, your question, Andrea, makes me think about laying water main, which is the size that we think, that's the equipment that we have, that's the skill sets that we have, but we don't do that work. For a lot of reasons, you know, one is we constantly get pulled off to go to an emergency and repair a main break, we can't be efficient because it's hard for us to dedicate a crew, and, you know, our people have vacation, so they can take vacations. The operators, the contractors don't allow their people to take vacation. That's just not, that's not a thing. You're a contractor. And there are a lot of reasons why we do maintenance and repairs, important work we do, and contractors do construction. But again, I've never say never.
sure,
We'll see what we learn.
Sure. which is
It's not our current.
exactly why we should move forward and working on this and executing this contract so we can find out what we don't know.
Back to a point that I was making at the beginning about, we're kind of a leader here nationally, and the fact that we're, and I'm gonna miscategorize what we are. I mean, the fact that we are not a part of a city, we're not a city department, changes the way that the federal dollars like this flow, and has been part of the issue here. I think that, again, the second time of the meeting, and thanks to the communication team's agenda, I think there's an opportunity and a reason for us to create some communication pieces about what we're doing with multiple audiences. One, so we can inform our community, especially those who have lead service lines, so that they know that we're doing this pilot project, but also work with our Washington team, our Washington lobbyists, to put together communication plans about what we're doing so that we can push that out in DC. So as these dollars or new dollars come online, those dollars flow a little more directly to us. We have a little more access to do these things. And also, as we learn about what we're doing through, what's the Association of American Water,
Well, AMWA is the one that
AMWA.
I'm working pretty closely.
but we share information from what we're doing, and get information about what other people are doing. I mean, we kind of are a leader, and so I want to make sure that we're communicating, both pushing information out and also gathering information so we learn about what other people are doing. But there's a political piece of this that I think it's important that we.
And I know that you know, Graham, that we've been working with the delegation in DC to try to get the funding right.
Right,
Because it's wrong right now.
right,
But we are at the beginning of this. And
Right.
we want to be leaders. We don't want to be waiting until everybody else is done. And then how come you guys haven't done anything? We want to get started.
it's impactful to the delegation, I mean, the congressional delegation. For us to say, we're doing this pilot program, despite the fact that the funding is not optimal at this point. I mean, that buys us some goodwill there and gives them some fodder as they go in and write this. So you guys are already doing this, but I just think making sure we gather that information, package it the right way, and divide those audiences, both our audiences here at home, but those audiences in DC. And at Amazon, other places.
Anything else? Okay, so we have a motion out there to award the 2023 lead water service line replacements to Torkelson Excavating Inc. to the amount of $1,389,300 and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the contract. All in favor? Say aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes. We'll move on to item D, which is the request permission to establish the date of a public hearing for environmental review of Saylorville Water Treatment Plant transmission improvements as the date of the August 2023 board meeting.
Andrea, part of the expansion of capacity at the Saylorville plant is construction of 2 transmission main segments. We are planning to use a state revolving fund loans to pay for that, despite the Washington Post article that we talked
Yes,
about earlier
great.
today. In spite of that, we're still planning to use SRF. And as part of the SRF process, the DNR is required to perform an environmental review of each project. And then once that environmental review is complete, the borrower, which in this case, Moines Waterworks, is required to hold a public hearing to share the results of that environmental review. DNR has completed the review. They have issued a finding of no significant impact. And so at this point, it's just up to us or incumbent upon us to hold a public hearing so that we can share those results. So we are here today to ask the board to establish the date of public hearing as the date of the August 2020 board meeting so that we can share those results as required by the SRF process.
So we need a motion to establish the date of the August 2023 board meeting as the date of the public hearing for environmental review of the Saylorville Water Treatment Plant Transmission Improvement Project. Is there a motion?
So
Second.
Any questions or comments? Not hearing any, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, same sign. That passes, and we move on to item E, request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute agreements for professional services for RO membranes pilot skid testing.
Yes, this is another project related to expansion of the Saylorville water treatment plant. Today, we use RO membranes at the plant. We have a specific type of membrane that a specific manufacturer that we have tested and piloted. We would like to have some flexibility to purchase membranes from more than one manufacturer, but before we are authorized to use different membranes, we have to go through a pilot testing process. So we have actually reached out to a number of RO manufacturers and suppliers with a request for proposals. We've gotten a number of proposals. The team reviewed those proposals based on the schedule, experience, cost, etc. They disqualified a couple of them, one because they didn't comply with the RFP, one because their cost was significantly higher. But we would like to contract with 2 of those membrane suppliers to do pilot testing so that hopefully will demonstrate that their membranes are effective on our specific water quality, and that we will have the opportunity to purchase one of 3 different kinds of membranes. So we can get some competition, literally bid those against each other. Now, we are here today to ask for permission to enter into professional services agreements with those 2 suppliers, subject to final negotiations and approval of the agreement by legal counsel. And I do want to note that subsequent to the writing of this agreement, the DNR advised us that they want us to pilot them for 120 days instead of 90 days. And so the prices could vary a little bit from what you see here. We've got a $52,000 quote and a $62,000 quote for a total of 115. It could be a little more than that through this negotiation because of that 120-day requirement. which we support, is probably a good idea. But that too will be part of the negotiation we're asking permission for today to do. Is increase the time to 120 days. We're looking for authorization to execute those two professional services.
So I need a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute a professional services agreement with Wigan Water Technologies in the amount of $52,500 and Harn RO Systems Inc. in the amount of $62,750 to conduct an RO membrane pilot skid testing and increase that testing period to 120 days contingent upon negotiation of terms and conditions acceptable to staff and subsequent review by legal counsel.
I'm going to make this move. John, do I need to amend this motion because the amounts may change a little bit?
Okay.
So, no, I think you can authorize staff to execute the contract for what has been bid and, already. We're gonna extend the contract to 120 days, which is gonna require some subsequent price negotiations. So I think what we'll represent to the contractors is you've been approved for this amount. Once we reach agreement on the subsequent amount, we'll probably come back to the board for authorization to do that. But you're gonna get paid this amount for 90 days. We're gonna negotiate another 30 on the contract with them. And by your action, Grant, you're directing staff to negotiate that additional 30 days into the contract.
And that gives you the ability to do what you need to do, Ted.
Yes.
So clear. There is a timing element here that may impact these.
Okay.
We would like to sign this, get started in advance of the next one.
Mhm.
So we really want to try and get these vendors in here in August. So I may have misunderstood what you laid out. I'm hoping we can get approval today to negotiate the terms with a 120-day test, of each of these vendors being authorized. to move forward.
So this is forgive my math, it's potentially a period of time that's 30% longer.
Right.
And the fee would probably be less than 30% additional fee, right?
We just have not had a chance to have those conversations. We were informed this about 1:30 today. So
I mean,
I'm guessing that would be the high end grant of linear.
I would be willing to make a motion that gave the staff the ability to approve the amounts that are here today, up to 30% more, if that gave you the opportunity to sign the agreement.
Can I just ask if we did sign the agreement? We could sign it for 90 days because we know what that cost is gonna be. Can we tack on 30 at
Then come back.
and do an
Get started.
addendum?
Well, that's cleaner.
Yeah.
That's a cleaner way to do it.
We'll sign it at 90, but say we need to do an addendum for
Right.
additional 30. I don't know.
Yeah.
Technically, I don't know if there's something they have to do different if they know it's gonna be 120 days at the beginning versus 90, but my thought would be once it's here and they're testing it.
And I guess the next question will be with that additional amount. It likely will be something less than $100,000.
Right.
But we still come back to the board.
Right.
Right.
I think there's a way to do this. So the motion, I'll make the motion as stated with the understanding that this is gonna come back to us.
Well, my motion includes the extension to 120.
Right.
Should we nix that and just have it be the clean as written motion?
Yeah, I think if that's the approach we're gonna take is basically tell the contractor we're gonna need to do an addendum for an additional 30 days that we'll negotiate with you. I don't know if anybody seconded the motion.
No, we haven't even made it yet.
Okay, so no motion has been made. So I would say you could just restate the motion as written, Andrea. Seek a motion on that. Somebody could make it second. And then, in dealing with the contractor, I think we can tell them this was a late addition. And so we just need to negotiate subsequent terms. If that works with engineering.
Do you have? Do you have like CO general manager authority to sign off on addendums like that if they're under?
Yes.
So it could maybe not even bother to come back to the board if it's a, you know, addendum to an agreement that we're about to approve.
Under $100,000, yeah.
It's just sort of a change.
Yeah,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
So does that also work as an option to help you? move
Yeah, we
things
just want
along?
to communicate to you that we're willing to bring this back, share
Sure.
what it is. I certainly can't have the authority.
Yeah.
Change.
Yeah, technically, the CEO has authority to do a change order up to 100,000.
Sure, so,
We're always pretty careful to make sure if it's close, we bring it back, just, get it out. in public view. But if it's, $20,000 or $30,000, I don't think we can on board with meeting, but I think we've got the direction we need, and if we get this approved, we can make it all happen. If it's something that needs to come back to the board, we definitely.
And I would think that even the motion as it was read with 120, since we understand that. These are the amounts that were authorized, the dollar amounts were authorized, and we don't even have to change the motion as it was read, because. We're giving you authorization to sign those agreements 90 to 100 day or 120 days. And with the understanding that there's going to be an additional amount to have those 120 days, and it may or may not come back to us for approval. Depending on your authority to do that.
Right. I think that sounds right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think, yes, you're authorizing staff to spend 115,000 by motion. We know in advance, that's not gonna get us to 420 days.
Right.
It will allow for execution of the initial 90-day contract with authorization to add a change order basically for 30 days, and then staff will have to figure out what that cost is gonna be.
So after that, Mike, the discussion over $115,000, I make the motion.
Yes. Thank you. You got it. Well, no, as modified with the 120-day
extension.
extension.
Yes.
I'll second.
Any other comments or questions?
I just had to comment with what we've been through the last couple of years with supply chain disruptions. I think it really makes sense to ensure we have diversity.
Right, absolutely.
Agreed.
Can I say, let's go ahead and vote on the motion that was previously said. I don't know if I can remember my exact wording. All in favor, say aye.
I
Any opposed, same sign? Not hearing any. I think we are officially done with the action items, moving into information items and the information part of our agenda. The first board committee reports lined up here would be the Finance and Audit Committee. We have an update.
Well, we talked about it a little bit, but our last meeting was an update on the pilot project for the lead sewer service lines. I think probably the only item we didn't talk about in terms of cost was also the targeted area, which is the River Bend neighborhood, targeting people who are financially constrained and therefore more likely to be impacted because these lines are found in areas that are now socioeconomically poor in our community, but then also less likely to have the financial ability to do this. So I think there's another positive aspect of the project in that regard. And yeah, it was just an update. So that was we were getting pitched the idea of the project. Now we're getting to hear about the cost of it a little bit. But that's kind of the main part from our perspective. And yeah, I guess just as chair, I think it's a good project. I'm excited to see it move forward. Wish it didn't cost quite as much, but it is a learning. I think the big thing is there's a lot of elements beyond just cost. I think there's going to be a good opportunity to learn about community engagement. We're operating in neighborhoods where trust in civic institutions is low, so we're going to have to navigate that as well. So it's a good opportunity to learn on a couple different fronts.
And continue to catalog that feedback and information we're getting, as I mentioned earlier, requested earlier when we were talking about regionalization of public meetings. The second committee report would be the planning committee.
Did not meet.
Did not meet. All right. Stowe Foundation and the Botanical Garden Board.
I don't have much to report on either. Speed things along.
All right, Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation Board, I will say I admittedly was not at the last meeting. I don't know if Patson has anything to add, but I think we're all just waiting to see what happens tomorrow. On vacation, so. We're waiting to see what happens tomorrow with RACRI rolling through and kind of taking over the park and all of the excitement that's gonna be generated there. There has been, there's a list of all the different concerts and events. I guess I will say the other thing, that is of note, there have been several major, festivals or concerts that Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation has been able to grab as they move into the 2024 season. 8035, the Hops, did I see your Music Under the Stars? That's what it was. Music Under the Stars is officially relocating over there. And so that's exciting for them to see some of these kind of steadfast events be revenue generators kind of moving into the park into the future.
I have a quick question about, I've heard a little buzz, and they don't know about it, about the traffic.
Yeah.
We're learning about that, whether or not any changes need to be made.
Changes have been made. Willie Nelson, the Willie Nelson concert resulted in significant traffic backups on Fluid Drive. And in fact, I heard stories related from people who came to the concert saying they waited over an hour on Fluid Drive to get turned in. And a couple of major changes have been made. Number one, the foundation has arranged with Des Moines PD to have officers at the entrance to direct traffic. And some of what we saw the night of Willie Nelson was that cars were coming southbound on Fluid Drive and both lanes wanted to turn in. So they were stopped. They had both lanes of southbound Fluid Drive stopped. And now they're not allowing people who are in the center lane southbound to stop. You got to. So, and the police are there and they're doing a much better job. So that's number one, is that there's a police presence right there from the very beginning directing traffic. Number two, they have created 2 lanes coming into the park, so you cannot exit at the main gate, what we call the Grays Lake Gate. That's 1 way in, 2 lanes, and they've doubled their capacity to move people into the parking area. So there was significant traffic congestion during the prior to the Willie Nelson concert, which was actually June 27th, June, I think. They've done better. That's not to say that they have completely eliminated the traffic congestion, but it's been significantly in subsequent, and they had a big month this month, since our last board meeting. Willie Nelson was there, Young the Giant, Co-Wetzel, Dirty Heads, Ed South, Sticks, Whiskey Myers, and others, all within since the last board meeting, and they've done much better, in my opinion. Now, I don't know if anyone else has heard any more.
One thing I might add would be immediately after that incident, we did meet the Park Foundation staff, Des Moines Waterworks staff, Des Moines Police, work out a better approach. And like Ted said, having 2 lanes of traffic coming in, having more people directing people into parking some areas, multiple parking places in the park. And so there was immediate response to improve, and they subsequently from the other concerts see much better traffic movement both in and out of the park during the events.
That Willie Nelson was the biggest paid event they'd had by far. And so they learned from it. Yeah,
Which is a unique event.
which is a unique event. Yeah.
That
Probably
we
not
solved, we solved by just having no parking.
Yeah, Fluor is close, so.
Item B, the CEO and general manager's comments.
Andrew, I'm gonna focus on a couple of things. I want to direct the board's attention to the strategic plan, quarterly updates. We're halfway through the year. I'm gonna touch on a couple of things here. We've had a lot of discussions about employee experience here in the last 2 or 3 months, and one of our focus areas is our team or our employee experience specifically. We have been working on safety training, and you can see some statistics in there. 7,000 individual training sessions, that's per person, per training. Not necessarily training classes, but safety talks and those kind of things. We're trying to get 100% of our required training scheduled and tracked. We're making good progress there. We're at 88%, and that's always going to be a little bit of a lag because people are still taking the trainings that have been assigned to them. That number keeps going up each month as we get deeper into the year. New hire and transfer safety training checklists completed. We've had every single one of those completed for our new hires. And so far, this to date, there's been one that we weren't able to get completed within 60 days, which our goal was to have 100% completed within 60 days. Missed it by one. Can't back that up, but there's a strong focus there. We're getting their safety training done. That's a good thing. We've also hired the distribution technical trainer or the field training specialist in water distribution. He's started a new role, and I know spending a lot of time with employees, just making sure that they get the laps, they get the repetition they need to be familiar with some of the safety training items that we have. That's a positive thing. Our turnover ratio, we're trying to maintain less than 10% turnover. We're at 4.1% through the end of June, so that's good. Still higher than we would like to see, and higher than we would have seen 10 years ago, but it's a little bit of a different world. They're highlighting some things that we're trying to do there in terms of the employee experience to maintain the employees, attract and maintain the best employees, and that's coming along. Customer, in the customer area, we are looking at an affordability assessment. Raftellus has been hired to do that. I know they're in work on that and are on track to complete that by the end of the third quarter. There's some highlights there of what their scope includes. Retail rate affordability options for implementation of a plan to address affordability, strategic communications, and some other things, but that's on track, and we'll look forward to presenting that to the board when we get that report. 100 lead service lines we've talked a lot about. Regional governance is one of our leadership KPIs, both that actually relate to regional governance. We've talked a lot about that already. Stewardship to capital reinvestment, we're halfway through the year. We've talked a lot about our goal being to spend the money, budget this money for projects that we need to do. We need to spend that money. Halfway through the year, we're at 48% of our funds obligated for our water main replacement contracts, 41% for total capital. Mike continues to remind me that the total capital is a heavy lift. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there to keep us on track. We're a little bit behind there, but it's a strong focus. We're going to get it done. Related to climate change, we've had a couple of great meetings here recently. Michelle is actually kind of helping me head that up, the assessment of what we want to do on climate change. We've had a couple of meetings with folks in that industry, and we will have a plan for next year, what we think we want to do there. On the diversity, equity, and inclusion front, I believe the board is aware that we've hired Shapeable Solutions to help us with implementation of some of the recommendations from the Keen initiative that we did last year. We've had a task force that's met a number of times. Shapeable is working on a number of areas that they like to categorize things in terms of workplace, workforce, and marketplace. And they're working on recommendations in all of those areas for us that we hope to have that report here before the end of the year, and I know that some of the members of the board have had the opportunity to talk here about our team, about our initiative there. And then lastly, related to the trusted tap water, we were participating with the University of Iowa in a grant funded project that they were doing. Unfortunately, they didn't get their phase 2 grant, but we did meet with them based on phase 1 results from the phase 1 work that they did. They've given us a lot of ideas of what we can do here at Des Moines Water Works to help improve trust in tap water. So we'll be evaluating the ideas that they presented us literally this week and deciding what, if any of those we can implement this year to help us on that journey towards improving trust in tap water. So a lot there. There's a lot going on. I think we're making progress on every one of our strategic initiatives. So I encourage the board to take a look at that.
With the civic bottled water study and those initiatives that they're going to provide, is that something that you would follow up and share with us when when staff decides what you're going to move forward on this year?
Absolutely. And as a minimum, Andrea, would be incorporated into our quarterly update, but it could also be something that we might discuss at planning. If it's an area of interest to the board. I'll be honest and tell you that some of what we had planned based on the funding they were going to get with their phase 2 grant was really cool stuff. And it was, kind of big and splashy and things that would have been very noticeable. This is going to be, we're going to have to step back a little bit. We are talking to some folks. Melissa has talked to some folks with Polk County about possibly getting grants that we could use to buy some water stations. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback recently about our water stations and placement at events. We'll have seen them at the concerts. At the concerts, I think there's 5 of them deployed for Ragbri. We're going to be at the farmers market fair. That is an important part of getting the word out, but there's also placing drinking fountains in city parks and in public places where there aren't drinking fountains. It is a simple thing that you can do. It's not cheap, but it's simple and it builds trust in town. And just a whole series of things. And yes, we will be sharing with you what they recommended and what we're going to try to do this year.
And then my only other comment would be, as you look at putting together the utilities climate action plan, would be to be in communication with the city of Des Moines is also working on a climate action plan, and others regionally, that there might be some overlap or some pieces that could be pulled out of theirs and incorporated into ours.
Yeah, next week we're meeting with them. And this week we met with Polk County and they've got an initiative. So we're trying to dovetail all of that together. We've got good information there. The other thing that I want to share is just a couple of comments on the Ragbri planning. I don't think there's ever been an event, maybe other than a flood in Waterworks Park, that has had so much planning going to it. And I thought I'd let Kyle share just a couple of comments on planning, what's going on, what's happening related to Ragbri this week.
We are very well prepared. Extensive coordination, Polk County Emergency Management, first responders, hospitals, pre-security teams, private security teams that are working, park foundation staff, and of course our own staff. So a lot of planning has been going in place. Drive through the park, we're going to do that. On your way out, you'll see some of the measures that have been installed. There's a portable command center, the IV donated or brought in for us to use. It will be used by security teams, police, responders, coordinate this event. Several cameras, dozens of portable cameras have been placed throughout the park, so that both that command center and also the command center of Polk County Emergency Management will have all these camera feeds. They can watch that. Dozens of light towers have been installed throughout the park, including 3 of the large Musco concert towers or whatever have been placed, light up the entire park. So a lot of planning, customer service. Like Ted said, but 5 water fill stations. They just today, because of the heat this week, they put in 2 misting stations. So we will go through and get misted with cold water to try to cool off because of the heat. Distribution has moved a lot of their equipment out because of all the traffic on the Sailor Treatment Plant, so they don't have to come into the plant trying to getting all their equipment out during congestion. Will be happening the next couple of days. The Browns is moving some of their equipment out to map it. They can report straight to there to avoid having to come in here. Some of our other staff, working remotely tomorrow, driving their company vehicles home. They don't have to come in. So there's a lot of coordination between the concert, the camping, and operations to make this very successful. I think we are very well prepared for this. To be exciting time. A lot of coordination.
Moving on to our item C, well, let me actually back up and say thank you. That is very reassuring to kind of hear the rundown of all the different things that have been laid out to prepare for tomorrow. I was telling somebody earlier, it's gonna be all very exciting on Thursday when we look back and say, look what we did. And I am confident and makes me feel a lot better to hear that rundown. So thank you for sharing that.
And a lot of those pictures look like climbers ascending Mount Everest, all the back. So many. Yes.
Item C, we have our safety update.
Andrew, I would direct the board's attention to the document there. There's a couple of statistics about the new hire transfer checklists and how many have been done. I already mentioned that 7,000 individual trainings or safety talks that have taken place so far in 2023. We have had 6 injuries to date, which is about 1 per month, which is obviously more than we'd like to see. Primarily, we're looking at sprains and strains. 5 of the 6 injuries are sprains and strains. One was kind of a collection of injuries related to a motor vehicle accident that we had. Person is back to work and doing well, but had a fairly serious accident that resulted in some injuries and some time away from keeping track of our safety training, trying to move that forward and continue to work that way.
Comments on the safety training. I appreciate it continuing to be part of our agenda and being touched on, and I hope that 7,000 is an unbelievable number, and I look forward and hope that the staff is feeling like they are getting the information and that the trainings that they need. I know there's probably a lot more to do, but I appreciate it.
There is a lot more to do, you know. Providing trainings is one thing. Getting people trained and comfortable is another.
Right.
It takes time. And making sure that the trainings are of value and are providing the people the skills and abilities. I'm really hopeful that the new safety trainer will help a lot with that, because I'll be able to spend more dedicated time and give more people training. But first step is just making sure the training is out.
Right. And with the ultimate goal of creating that culture of safety that we've talked about before. So part of that as a board is to continue to note that it is part of our agenda and continue to have that conversation and make it important and a priority.
Yeah, I just kind of harking back as the newer one, but with some of the conversations we've had with our guests union and some of those have come up around, you know, safety versus training versus what's happening in the field, making sure that safety is a culture everywhere. And I think some of that goes back to the other initiatives around retention, making sure that we have experienced people that know what they're doing. Not hopefully we're working towards that, and it's a new environment in terms of employment, everything. So, but I guess just an echo around all that, in addition to just the trainings themselves.
Make a great distinction there. There's a big difference between training and experience. Training is one thing, and we can put people through training, but you can only get experience through experience. Got a lot of new people. Trying to give them the awareness that we need so that they can work safely as they're gaining experience. That's going to take time. Experience takes time. The only way you can get it is through time. So we've got a ways to go, and we all understand that. Starts with the training, offering the training, making sure that people are getting to the training. The training is allowing them to get the experience without getting. It's a journey and we're taking the first steps.
And then item D, we have the contract status of professional service agreements. If anybody has any questions on those and had a chance to look through those. Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn and remind everybody to not move very far as we will open up our next meeting for the Moines Waterworks pension plan.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor. Adjourned. All right. Let me know.